Okay, fellas, we're live with another CMAS episode here, and we're discussing whether or not porn is war. And so I'm going to read off a few statistics about pornography use in our world today to bring light to the fact of how ever present it is. And given that our conversation is on whether or not it's war, we'll decide on whether or not we're living in a global war with weaponized porn. So, the first statistic I want to share is that did you know that over 1/3 of all internet downloads are related to pornography? And that Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined don't receive as much traffic as porn. Porn has more traffic than Netflix. Think about that. All the movies, Amazon, all the shopping, and Twitter, all the social media combined. That's how much porn is being visited. Over a third, 34% of internet users have experienced unwanted exposure to pornography content through ads, pop-ups, misdirected links, or emails. I know that's happened to me before. It was weird. One day I was on Twitter and all of a sudden a nakedness show up, like literal porn. Let's see. 37 pornographic videos are created every day in the United States. Every second, 28,258 users are watching pornography on the internet. $3,075.64 is being spent on pornography every second on the internet. 327 people are typing in the word adult into the search engine every second. 2.5 billion emails containing pornography are sent and received every day. 68 million search queries related to pornography every day. And 116,000 queries every day is related to child pornography. Wow. 40 million Americans regularly visit porn sites. About 250,000 Americans are classified as porn addicts. 1/3 of all porn viewers are women. How does pornography hurt teens? It increases the odds of teen pregnancy. It hinders sexual development. So much of the erectile dysfunction that we're seeing in the world today related to what porn does to the brain. It's been shown to increase the risk for depression in teens. It creates distorted expectations and hinder healthy sexual development. As far as family and marital stats are concerned, according to the National Coalition of Protection of Children and Families, in 2010, 47% of families in America reported that pornography is a problem in their home. Almost half of families say that it's a problem in their home. That's crazy. Pornography use increases marital infidelity by more than 300%. 40% of people identified as sex addicts lose their spouses. 58% suffer considerable financial losses. And about 33% lose their jobs because of porn. Wow, that's crazy. And 68% of divorce cases, 68% of divorce cases involve one party meeting a new partner over the internet, while 56% involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. So there we have it, fellas. It's ever present. It is pervasive. It's the most popular thing on the internet. You could say that the internet is a porn engine. Is this a problem? I would love to pose that to you guys. Go ahead, Tim. Is this a problem that this much pornography is? Because look, there are those who will say that sex is, look, hey man, I believe you're right because it's normal. Sex is normal. Blowing your load as a man is normal. Looking at it, what's the big deal? Why would this be a problem? Everybody's doing it. More people are using it than Amazon and Netflix and Twitter. So what's the problem?
Yeah, Yeah, of course it's a big problem, but you identified the heart of it right now, Elliot. If there's not a moral dilemma with non-procreative unilateral or bilateral sexual activity, then there shouldn't be a moral dilemma, and people shouldn't start to have one the second that porn creates infidelity, creates divorce, and co-involves contraception. You're right. So you located it right at the outset here. You either are all on board, folks out there, that non-procreative, non-marital, unilateral, or bilateral sex is not just a matter of consensus and consent, but it's a matter of the three prongs. Initially, sexual activity has to have all of these elements. It's got to be marital, unitive, procreative. Or else you don't get to have a problem with the fact that, like, all your neighbors, or 80% of them, are porn freaks. Some of them getting laid off from their jobs because they're at home too busy uh, slapping it around to get up and go into work. So it's going to influence resale value in your neighborhood there. So
Right.
I like how you did that early on, Elliot, because now it's very popular to talk about, as it should be. It is a problem. Porn is a war that has been leveraged upon a lot of specific targets in the West. But why should we, according to the normies out there, why should we have a problem with this war? It's not involving actual bloodshed most of the time. It's just involving a naked, no pun intended, bald approach to the problems that we Catholics have been saying are there, morally speaking, all the time.
Michael, is porn a problem?
I would say definitely. I would say it's a problem in at least two respects. One is what Tim just mentioned and all the statistics that you just mentioned. So yeah, the average 21st century mind is now inundated in this immersive ecosystem of visual vice and opportunity for that. And then I think maybe even the worst or the worst element of it is the normalization of it, right? It's the fact that it's not looked at as a traditional problem as you would imagine, like drug use or alcoholism is
Mm-hmm.
looked at, right? There's not no comparable, like, I mean, maybe I suppose there might be like a porn addicts anonymous type space, but it's not looked at similar to, like, oh, this guy has an alcohol problem, we need to get him some help. Rather, it's
Right.
this very normalized, don't worry about it. And I think that normalization is actually could be very, very pernicious insofar it's not the type of thing. It's not similar to a hardline drug or narcotics addiction, but it has all the qualities of an addictive substance, and at large, it's been normalized. It's like the whole country are crack addicts or narcotics addicts, on the or most of them on those statistics. So those are the two elements I think are really worrying, and certainly harmful and certainly a problem. Yeah.
Now, Will, you wrote a summary of a very powerful book by Michael Jones, E. Michael Jones, that he subtitles Sexual Liberation and Political Slavery, I think, called Libido Dominandi. And he asserts that pornography is a literal weapon. What does he mean by that? And who is using pornography against us as a weapon, and why?
Well, if you can get someone addicted to something, then you can control him because you have power over him. And we see warnings about the way in which lust can be exploited against men in the Old Testament in particular. Think about how Samson, for example, was easy to control when he wasn't able to control his own lust. And if you can just use that against men at large, then it gives you great power over a civilization. You can weaken it right at the root in the family because of the destructive effects that porn has on marriage in particular. And when we're thinking about virtue, it's what strengthens a man, it's what helps him to flourish. When we're thinking about vice, so bad patterns of behavior, vice, as Aquinas says bluntly, destroys. Vice destroys. So if we can get more men addicted to this vice, then just like if you were going to take alcohol away from an alcoholic, if you take porn away from a porn addict, he's going to cry and scream. So you've now got leverage over him. You can get him to vote the way you want because you've got all these sex fiends who you've dished out this thing they want to, and now they depend on you to keep getting it. So they're going to vote the way you want them to vote. They're not going to be interested in marriage and family because they've got the leak of all their masculine energy just masturbating over what Jordan Peterson called the fairy, Peter Pan and porn, the fairy of Tinkerbell. That's what porn is in young men's lives. So they're not forging ahead to make families and do anything big in the world. They've just been like neutered in this fantasy land.
Yeah.
The perverts are all out there. Like there's Peter Pan porn. Where can I get my hands on it? Tinkerbell? What? He was all perked up when Will said that. I didn't see this, and I've seen every. That's. Also, Will forgot to answer the question. The official answer to who is the one that's weaponizing the porn.
Right.
It's this very simple answer. It's I plead the fifth, right? Because you already know. But I'm just joking there. Just joking.
Well, in other words, you're not allowed to point out the enemy. Is that what you're saying?
No,
you can't.
Don't.
Can't
Why
say
would
their
you?
name.
That means you're bad. No,
Well-
I'm joking. Anyone can say it
Well,
here if they want.
they'll
I'm just
Michael
thinking about
Jones
your,
you if you do.
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will. They will.
There's a
Wink, wink.
Yeah. There's a. You can get the full interview that I did of me, Michael Jones, on my Substack. It got me a channel strike on YouTube because he said the name about 50 times during the interview, but it's on Substack. However, although that is true, I don't buy that victim narrative because some people love to just say, like, that group hurt me. But who's the one funding the porn industry? No one's being forced to subscribe to Pornhub. There's not a law saying you got to watch it. So, in a sense, when you are weakened by sin, you're easy to exploit. Like, I don't watch any porn. You guys don't. No one has to. Why is it that people are able to prey on us? It's like saying with abortion, no one's being forced to kill their kids, but there's a lot of it happening.
Well, I have to say that pornography
That's an
is...
underrepresented point of view.
Say that again. What's it?
Sorry.
Say it again. Go ahead, Tim.
I just said I agree. I think it's a non-binary thing, but it's an underrepresented point of view, and I make the point all the time about abortion. That's a valid perspective. Sorry.
Got
Delay.
you. No, you're cool. So, I have been speaking with upwards to 50 men a week in my new program, War on Vice, where we're seeking to make men strong again by going to war against drinking, drugs, and jerking off. And I will say that at a good 70% of the men that come to me in their war against some vice are struggling with pornography. And I took it for granted because it wasn't something that I ever really struggled with. I got married very early on, and pornography wasn't as pervasive when I was a youth. I fell into other things. I drank a lot when I was in a youth, and I smoked weed. But it seems as if men today not only are suffering from the addiction to porn, but they're more aware of its detrimental effects than ever before. I'm actually I'm shocked and in awe of how self-aware they are of their experience after their use of pornography. Men experience and they share that they have anxiety, that they have depression, that they lose their charisma and their ability to speak to women. They lose their motivation to go to the gym and to strive in work. I got cut off and I lost my guest. That's the price I pay for living in rural Florida. Let's see if my guest can join us here again pretty soon. I apologize for this, guys. Yeah. Well, I apologize. Can you guys see me and hear me? I'm talking to my fans here on YouTube. I apologize. I'm going to see if I can get my guest back. Yeah, AT. I don't know if it's spiritual attack. I think it's just bad internet. maybe it is. Waiting for host. Okay, so these guys are trying to get me back. I don't know why. Okay, I don't know why I'm not seeing my guest. Okay, I'm going to try to come back here. There we go.
Yo,
Oh man, I see you, buddy.
you froze, and then I hung up and then tried to get back. Okay, cool.
Yep. Well, I have to
You back?
apologize. The internet just shut down on me. Somebody said it's a spiritual attack. It's the porn gods. They don't like this conversation. But let's just pick up where we left off, and I'll edit that out. But essentially, I'm seeing this firsthand when I speak to men every week. I just wanted to add that for sure men are recognizing its effect on their mental, emotional, and physical lives. You know, we're talking spiritual warfare, but it has a very real and tangible material effect on the men. And I think we just lost Will. Here he comes back. Okay. All right. So, continuing the conversation on whether or not porn is war, we know that it is pervasive, ever present, and that men are, and people are using it more than they're using Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. It is over 1/3 of the use on the internet. We're discussing whether or not this is a weapon of war. And so the conversation took a turn towards E. Michael Jones and his book Libido Dominandi, and those who say or suggest that there is an enemy that wants to see us weakened by the use of pornography. And it looks like we just lost Tim again. It's going to be one of those days, fellas. Let me ask you guys each so that we can kind of bring this conversation back down to earth. We're fallen men. We are men that are tempted and being tested real big time right now because everybody keeps disappearing. But I still got you, Mikey. Mike, you know,
Right.
and I think it's most appropriate to start with you because, like myself, you and I sort of returned to the faith. We were, after falling away, we returned to righteousness later in our life. What was your experience growing up with pornography and its first use? And when and how did you decide that it was something that you needed to turn away from?
So yeah, you know, very very similar to you growing up. I grew up in a traditional Catholic family and upbringing. Went to CCD on Mondays and whatnot. Went to church on Sundays, and it was a very taboo thing growing up, and it was also very inaccessible. You know, it wasn't. You know, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have screens, so it was. You know, we knew somebody's older brother had a gym bag of magazines of you know Playboys, and that was this essentially the contraband material that you had to know somebody who knew somebody
Yeah.
to get a hold of this. So just the technological medium didn't facilitate this at all, and there was a still like a there was a public element to it. You had to know somebody to go get his whatever brother to lend you the magazine. It wasn't this like super internalized, private, atomized uh, thing that the internet has now turned, even made it even more so. Uh, but it was always something that I
Hello, hello,
suspected
hello.
was wrong. I knew it was. Yep, we can hear you. You're good. Yeah, I knew in my bones this is something not right. There's something definitely dirty about this. Um, then in my college years, I got a computer and we had the internet, and yeah, I started going down that lane of watching video porn. At the same time, I was losing my faith, uh, getting it kicked out of me by atheistic arguments combined with the whole like Darwinian evolutionary determinist view of man. So that just reinforced like, oh, this isn't that bad. Man, we're it's natural for us to want to spread our seed to as many women as possible. So maybe this might have detriment in terms of my self development or something. But I'm no longer am I thinking, oh well, this is pernicious to my soul or to my character, or like, well, all that stuff doesn't even exist. I'm just a meat machine that's programmed to procreate. So this is all natural. This is evolutionarily backed up. So the my thinking and my behavior were um, in line, or they mutually supported one another. Then I got into the whatever the pickup artist like space, um, and that made my that now the porn use was spilling out into my like behavior in relation towards women and towards seeing them just as sexual objects. And that shamefully continued for a very long time until I started reconsidering my faith and actually listening to Owen Benjamin talking to E. Michael Jones and mentioned the book Libido Dominandi. And it was the first time where it made me consider that porn could ever be something that wasn't normal, that it was being socially engineered and normalized. And after several failed attempts, I finally I quit it cold turkey several years ago after a lot of prayer and a lot of really thinking like this isn't good. This really isn't good, and it's vicious. And I haven't looked at it since. It's probably about three years ago or so. But that's the short version of my relationship with that vice.
Tim, we're trying to bring it back down to a level where the guys who are listening can sort of relate. And so to sort of humanize this conversation, I wanted to propose that we each share our experience with porn. Has it ever been something that was, or when did you first come across it? Usually it's a friend or an older brother or a cousin. Has it ever been a problem in your life, and when did you come to the realization that it should be something avoided? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. My first experience was in fucking kindergarten. I think. It was between kindergarten and first grade. It was summer. I was down the block at my friend Ryan's house, who I'd known since I was about 1 year old. I still know him, actually. He's a cool dude. But he had a friend down his street called Bennett, and Bennett had an older brother who secured what I think at the time I ended up telling my parents I saw a Playboy. It was upsetting. I think it was a Hustler though. Somehow I knew what Playboy was, which is kind of frightening that I even knew the brand names, but I guess they do their job. And I saw stuff that was alluring yet horrifying. I think it was more serious. It was basically oral sex or whatever. Not trying to get too blue up in here. And I was like, that's fascinating. You know, my young little 5-year-old mind, I already liked girls. I remember I noticed how much I liked the girls in kindergarten. So I was like, wow, what's going on? You know, I thought this lady was drinking this man's pee, and that's what Bennett told us all. He's like, yeah, they do that. So it was confounding my categories. That's the fact of the matter, is it confounds your categories. And I was allured yet horrified. I went home, and later that night I felt so guilty. I told my parents, you know, which is something I would do a lot. I would tell my parents when I did something wrong or I got into trouble, you know, even if I got away with it. And from that point on, it was like, and I think for the next, 5 years, I thought one of those things that's naughty, that's constituted by the term having sex, is like a woman would drink a man's pee. I think I thought that until probably 4th grade or something. I was like, do you guys know what they do to each other in these movie scenes after it cuts out? Let's say it's not lemonade, brother. But yeah, I was clear of that stuff. Not anything like middle school. It was like late high school that I received like a hand-me-down stack of someone's porn, and of course I think I was never addicted, but I just was like, all right, I'll take it. And I think my mom found it in my senior year of high school. She just left it. She just left it out and playing. I guess she was cleaning my room or something, and she left it from where she found it, like on my desk. And I was like, I was about to graduate, and I was like, yeah, sorry about that. She was really disgusted. I mean, good for my mom. Thanks, Mom. It's really shamed me. She's like, I don't want to talk to you about it. I don't really want to talk to you right now. This is gross. So that was just, it was never like an addiction thing for me. College, I might have had a couple more experiences with it, but at that point, this was before everyone had smartphones. You had to go and buy it, and I never did. I think so. I think I wound up maybe with that same old stack of porn, like hand me down from someone. I don't know who. I think it was a friend. I didn't quite throw it away or something, but I just was never addicted to it. I barely ever used it. I remember sometime in college just throwing it away, and just not being. Once I got serious about my wife, who I started dating at the end of college, it was just like, well, it would be unfaithful to even occasionally. I don't have an addictive personality. I can drink coffee every day for a week and then not drink it every day for a week. To occasionally even look at this, because I was young and basically pagan, would be unfaithful to my girlfriend, who became my wife. And that's really what I cared about. Again, I've adverted to this many times on my own show. I was like a neo-stoic kind of. I always held to the natural law. I don't want to do something that would be unfaithful to staff. But I didn't care about the even deeper issue that this is deeply offensive to God. So, I've never struggled with it in marriage or after beginning to date my wife. So,
yeah, similar experience here. The first time I saw pornography was at my school. I was in elementary school, and we had a creek that it was called Brookside School because it was a brook that ran around it. And apparently, people would stash things in the brook that they didn't want people to find, dig little holes and hide them behind the bushes. And I remember being with my friends and, kind of walking alongside the brook, and we saw something that caught our eye. And it was a magazine. And we, of course, picked it up, and it was like, man, now in retrospect, I think about my attitude towards it. It was like I found gold, and I became greedy for it. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know if it was just me, and something came over me, or all my friends, we were thinking this way, but it was like, who gets which picture? And so we're like, kind of like hyenas on a dead carcass. It was like, ooh, I want this one. We would tear it out carefully, fold it up, and put it in our pocket. And we just, little by little, taking apart this magazine and taking our favorite pictures. And for weeks, afterwards, we were obsessed. Where normally during recess, we would play sports. I mean, that's forever, that's what we did. But for weeks, we would sneak into the bathroom either before recess or after it or something, or just like sometime during recess, we would have to have this, I don't know, it was like how kids share Pokemon cards. And we'd go in and I'd see his and he'd look at mine. And we were deciding like whose was better. And then we'd trade, let me look
Your
at yours.
pictures.
Yeah.
Your pictures, you mean? Yeah, you said I'd see his, he'd see
Oh.
mine.
Yeah. No, we weren't going that level. It was definitely the pictures. And so we were trading them like baseball cards. And so that was the first time I ever saw it. And it's crazy now that I think about it, how covetous I became of the imagery of what I was seeing in those pictures. Later on down the line, when I got a bit older, maybe in high school, I found some VHS tapes. And so we're going to talk about that in a moment. Of course, you know, there's only one person. I'm the oldest son, so there's only one guy that would have brought VHS tapes into my house. Might as well say his name. But they were there, and I found them. And, you know, I was snooping through things I probably shouldn't have in a part of the house that I really didn't need to be in. But when I found them, it was just another one of those, like, strike gold. I thought nothing of it in terms of it being a bad thing. It was like, wow, I found a treasure, and I'm lucky as a result. And I used it frequently. Shortly thereafter, I met my wife, I met my girlfriend, and we were fornicating, right? And so I didn't use pornography as a result. I just, you know, I didn't have that urge. But then when I got to college, it was kind of crazy. It never really was an issue, but the internet came out when I was in my freshman year. Didn't even have an email address until almost like I graduated college. That's how kind of, I don't want to say how old we are, because we're about the same age, but how rapidly things evolved, right? And I remember about the time Biggie Smalls was like, you know, big rapper at the time, right? He was very popular at the time. And I loved me some Biggie. And it was the craziest thing because I figured the first thing I wanted to search on the internet, because it was about that time, I was like, I got the internet now, I'm gonna go to biggie.com, right? I figured, well, you know, I wanna watch some Biggie videos or listen to some Biggie music. Go to Biggie's website. So I go to biggie.com, you know what I saw? Big old meat. I just saw just big slabs of meat. And that was the first time that I came across internet pornography. And I didn't become as covetous of it because now I was covetous of my girlfriend. But I did visit that site many times thereafter. I didn't realize how much of a problem it was. You know, many years had passed and I had not used it at all, or, you know, sparingly, or just rarely. It was never a problem because I was having sex even before marriage. That's a conversation altogether for another show. But it wasn't until I started mentoring to men at my gym and answering questions on YouTube that I even began to realize how upfront and shameless, let me put it that way, right? Because I had a sense of shame, right? Like I wouldn't go and tell everybody about it. I wouldn't brag about it. I wouldn't bring it up as a problem or a conversation. But then all of a sudden I'm getting emails and messages from young men who watch my videos and they're saying, Elliot, how do I fix this problem? And to hear them use that word problem in associated with what I thought was kind of, I don't know, normal, sent me down a rabbit hole where I began looking into the physiological effects of what pornography does, which led me down a couple different rabbit holes in terms of what this tendency to believe that men should be constantly blowing their loads leads to in our society. I mean, pornography is one thing, but I think it's more accurately described as PMO when I speak with these men. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, but they link pornography with masturbation and orgasm. So it's not just pornography addiction, right? Because nobody just watches porn and then you know, walks away. You watch porn and then you go into the rabbit hole of porn, right? Which is then, of course, the next step is you're gonna play with yourself. And the addiction is actually to the orgasm. That they say that the chemical reaction in the brain of having an orgasm is similar to that of someone who takes a hit of heroin. And so you can become addicted to PMO as a result. So I appreciate you guys sharing that with me. I wish we could get Will back. I'd love to hear his story. He seems to be coming in and out. It seems like one of those days where we're getting attacked, right, left and right, and that's okay. We're going to keep this rolling. What I would like to ask, Tim, I'll start with you. I know you're a fan of Jesse Romero. So am I. I love his stuff. I listened to the podcast about spiritual warfare that he does with Kyle Clement. And in one of the episodes, they were talking about how Satanists they will incant various spells. I don't know if this sounds crazy or not, but I just want to know what you guys' opinion are on this. But they would literally curse the master film of a pornography, video, and that would go out and it would open the door, and they were hoping it would open the door. And in many instances, I've seen it open doors, and there are many instances where Father Ripperger, as an exorcist, talks about an open door to the spiritual attack comes through pornography. What are your thoughts on that? Can Satan enter the home through what someone watches on a screen?
Of course. And that doesn't surprise me a bit that there would be an aversion to the preternatural by the warmongers on the other side of this. But I'll say this. They don't have to advert to the preternatural, because the natural vice, habitual natural vice, if it's grave, like the usage of pornography, informs an aperture to obsession, infestation, possession as well. So that's all. It's always interesting, more juicy, sexier, if you'll pardon the pun, to hear that someone got possessed because of something preternatural, a preternatural agent. But natural agency through natural vice is a real inroads for possession as well. So I would say I've gotten a little more in first person account kind of touch connection with this stuff as I've begun helping every other couple months with exorcisms in a neighboring diocese. But that's always the question when you're dealing with an energumen. That's what people would call it, demoniac. The priest is torturing the demon out of the energumen, and the second to last thing they usually learn is how'd you get in, and the last thing is usually the demon's name, after which the demon will leave the energumen. Well, it's common. It's really common to hear with really bad exorcisms, I'm learning, and really bad possessions, some sort of heightened extra preternatural invitation on the part of the human agent. But what's more common is natural vice itself. So I believe either. I believe both and with Jesse's story.
Thank you.
Both dimensions.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard the same stories, and I've heard other people say it as well. Mike, what are your thoughts, or what is your experience, or what have you learned about the spiritual doors being open, demonic doors being opened into a home where the father or anyone is using pornography?
So the association that just came to mind from what you had just mentioned, it's not directly related to porn, but it's of that similar, like, the satanic rituals overlapping with mediums of entertainment consumption. But I think it's connected. Is years ago I used to listen a lot to the Nine Inch Nails, and I used to enjoy the dark self-loathing of that music. And later on in life, I learned that the recording of, I don't know, one of those albums was intentionally done at the Tate home, where Sharon Tate was murdered by the Manson family. Like, they did the recording of the album in the murder home. And, like, you look at that, and you're like, why would they do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like that's really dark, right? That's really like going beyond the Call of Duty, over and above the Call of Duty to be really dark and wicked. And that's just when I learned that, that really made me rethink, like what the hell what music was I putting into my head when I was a teenager?
Right.
But in any event, it wouldn't surprise me at all if not just in the music industry, but in the porn industry as well, that they're not also going over and above to invoke the natural and supernatural vice in order to intertwine that with with what they're creating. So that, yeah, I think it goes deep.
Just to add to that, I remember hearing Father Ripperger speak on this subject one day, and he talked about how in confession he would speak with a father, and this was a fatherhood conference he was giving, specifically about how, of course, Satan attacks the head. If he can take out the leader, he can take out the family. And one of his favorite tactics for getting to the children is getting the father addicted to or using or just bringing pornography into the home. And he mentioned how in a particular case, he noticed that when the father was using pornography, the child, his younger son, his son, who's, I think he mentioned about like 8 or 9 years old, very young child, who knew nothing about pornography or sex, was having disordered urges and affections that he couldn't explain. And so I guess, you know, as a confessor, he would hear the father, but then hear the son and see how they were connected. And that to me was evidence that just by, and so I listen to a lot of guys, and I don't bring this up on our conversations because, you know, I'm trying to get information out of them rather than coaching them on the call. But if any of you guys who I've spoken to on the phone about the war on vice had told me about your pornography use and the fact that you also have children, know too that it's not just a isolated private sin. As the head of the family, you are the gateway to the children, and because pornography is not, it embeds itself into the nervous system through the eyes and the body. It goes deep. That you're literally you're bringing that spirit into the home and affecting the children as well. Tim, you have 6 children, but you only have 1 son, correct?
You have 7 kids, 1 son. Yeah.
7 kids, 1 son, which, you know, I don't really even think is an issue because one of the statistics that I did not speak out, because mostly we're talking about men, but 1/3 of porn users are women. I'm curious, have you spoken with your children? Do you speak to them about porn? And what do you do to steel them against seeing it?
It's a good question. This just came up semi recently. My eldest is Abby, going on 15. She's special case, right? She's in a wheelchair. She doesn't hop on the internet or anything. Next oldest kid is Maggie, who's very precocious. She's always around the adults. She just turned 12. She gets stuff. We didn't intentionally bring up the sex convo in 8, 9, 10 years old the way they do at public schools or even Catholic schools. I think I got the sex convo at 9 or 10, way too early. But she got it just by necessity once she was figuring stuff out, and I'd see her smiling. I'd be like, all right, we need to do this. So that's when we did the sex convo, and that was more like 11. She was 11. And it was just because Maggie's famously precocious. She figures stuff out. We have adult friends over that are the dear family friends. She wants to hang out with them. She stops hanging out with the kids the way you start going kind of heterogeneous. Kid time, more adult time or teen time when you're in middle school. But she likes to hang out with the adults. So we gave her the talk, and then I realized after we gave her the talk by a couple weeks, like she does lots of crafts with her mom. She's very into seahorses. She's saving up to buy some seahorses. Does all kinds of stitch work and watercolor with her mom. So they get onto YouTube a lot, Steph and her, to figure out new techniques and stuff. And when she asked to do this alone, that's when Steph's like, oh, I totally forgot. There's so much filth, even in the form of the Skittles nonsense, that we got to talk to her about that. So of course, none of my kids have smartphones. None of them are gonna have smartphones. I mean, we're not a Puritan household. They watch the older kids. If it's a movie that's got no sex in it and it's just got, wholesome American violence in an action film or something, some of the older kids, 9, will watch action movies with us, even if there are or whatever. But they're not going to have a phone, because the phone is a pathway to only bad things. So if Steph and I go on a date and they're babysitting, we'll give them a phone, or we'll communicate, through whatever means. Our kids do not have phones. So it's not that big of a deal, but we did have the talk.
Got you. Given that you don't have phones, do you still have filters or blockers on your internet Wi-Fi in the home?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I'm lucky enough to be part of something that's going to be very, very big. Very, very, very big, by way of answering your question. But no, I didn't do the Covenant Eyes. That stuff, I'm not impressed with the product. It doesn't filter what it needs to be filtering, which is most of the smut on people's Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds. And I don't just mean hardcore pornography. I mean stuff like women in booby shirts everywhere. So I'm very excited about something that everyone here is going to hear about. I'm involved at an integral level, and that's where we are in a kind of beta test now, private beta test now, and we're months away from something that I think will change the internet. But no, we haven't used that thus far. We're very, very, we're always together, my fam. So, like you, Elliot, I'm always home. We know what the girls are doing all day long. Now, sometimes we let them watch the Netflix for kids, and that's got some stuff. But for internet, we just kind of we're very vigilant, and we filter that stuff. Hey, I was looking at a wrong clock. I actually have to buzz, and I'm sorry to do that before everyone else, but I have a hard out at 10.
Okay, cool. That's all right. Will is trying to get back, but we've got Mike, and I wanted to go to Mike now. Hey, Tim, thanks for joining us, bro. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you,
And that
my
was
brother.
some great input and great insight, and God bless you, man. We'll see you next time.
God bless you all. We'll see you next time.
Later.
So, Mike, as a single man, there's this idea that you must blow your load, and if you're a man, you need to be, I don't know, there's no reason why, or it's unhealthy to not find a way to have that release. How do you handle, being chaste, but in this particular way, in a world that proposes that it is normal, natural, and it's your right to watch pornography and jerk off and get addicted to orgasm? What are your experience and thoughts on that as a single man?
Right. So yeah, I would just reiterate what I intimated at before, is that I think that ethic that you just described, it's fundamentally based on a flawed anthropology of man. So if one accepts the evolutionary determinist view of man, right, that we're just we're built to spread our seed far and wide, and this is natural, and natural equals good, and that anything gets in the way of blocking that is somehow bad, or shows that you're like, you're low T or something like that. I just think that it's just based on a flawed anthropology of what the human person and what the human male actually is. And that requires going really deep to foundational principles about whether there's a God or not. So if you accept that there is God, a creator, and you're not it, and you're a creature, now we can start talking about a theistic view of man, and what our final end and what our purpose is and what we're purpose built for. That, I think, that shift of seeing myself as a creature of God with a will and an intellect and a body, but that is oriented towards a particular final end, and that there's something that is good for me. And what is good for me is that I do what the Creator says, and I'll be blessed in that way, and that we're built to be fathers and protectors and fully realized men and persons. That is going to take you on a trajectory of behaviors that are going to be totally different from the atheistic view that says, well, we're just accidental meat machines, and by random accidents of evolution, it just turns out that we're built to spread our seed, far and wide. There is no morality. Do whatever you want. Morality just is this epiphenomenal thing, but it's not gripping anything in the world. Do whatever, and fornicate, or participate in vicarious fornication through porn, and it's not really that big of a deal. So I think, really, for me, yeah, it came down to just a bottom-up assessment of everything, right? Either is there God or isn't there, and then what are the two arcs does that take you, and what does that demand of you if the answer is yes?
Okay.
I know it's a long-winded answer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. That's cool. Let me ask you this. What do you do when you got a raging boner? How do you handle that?
Right. I would say, try to remove the situation of vice prior to that. We are capable of higher order thinking, so arrange your environment that there aren't triggers, put as much friction between you and the bad activity as possible. Don't have use the whatever freedom app.
Can you
or
guys hear
something,
me?
or get Roger. Yep.
I still got no sound for you. It's just not working.
You can't hear
I
us?
guess I said E. Michael Jones too many times.
We hear you and see you very clearly, Will. But you can't.
I can't hear you.
us?
All right.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys next
Ah.
week. It's not going to work for me today. That's a shame.
Oh man. Yep. Okay. Maybe we'll have to do this
Right.
again. All right, brother.
Cool.
Wait a minute.
Okay. Yeah, we're talking about how to handle it, like on a practical level, right? Like when it's just
Yeah.
raging and it wants to go. What do you
Roger.
do?
Yep. Yeah. So I don't want to sound like this. This used to piss me off when I would hear folks like give these types of prescriptions, and they're like, "Well, just tie an elastic around your wrist and then just snap it whenever you're you're feeling that temptation, and that should work." I'm not prescribing like a one, like some one little adjustment. I'm saying like do that, but try to overhaul your entire damn environment. Overhaul take hundreds of little changes to your physical environment, to all the triggers in your environment, to your connection to screens, to like just full overhaul of every possible thing that could start taking you down that particular set of bad reasoning and bad behaviors. In the same way, like the architecture of like a Las Vegas casino is built to keep people there and make bad decisions as often as long as possible and get them addicted to stay in that environment. One more second. You got to reverse engineer your entire life and your entire world like that, but just in the opposite direction. So I'm not saying one little adjustment, but like big scale adjustments. The book Atomic Habits by I forget what his name is, Andrew Jason Clear, something Clear. That, to my mind, he's an Aristotelian, but that I think was very helpful for me in thinking like systemic, big picture. Make 1,000 little adjustments to your decision ecosystem, your
Right.
choice architecture, and that, in aggregate, I think can really help preventing you getting to that point of making the dumb decision. Because if you're already down that road, then you're already going to make it. So the point is that, like, try to think 10 steps ahead of yourself.
Yeah. So, I would add to that just some things that I've heard, but then also some things that I've developed in terms of sexual self-mastery, even as a married man, right? Because it's not, a lot of these guys think that just because you're married that you're supposed to have sex every time you have a boner. And a lot of these guys don't recognize that chances are you're probably having sterile sex anyway. So if that was the case, you'd have 27 kids. And so having self-control and self-mastery in a marriage is a great practice, right? And even in terms of maintaining frame as a man and having your wife not always be in control. So there are times where I'll go a long time and focus on semen retention. And so there are a few things that I've discovered practically, personally, that I'd love to share. And then there are a few things that I've watched videos and I've heard other men say worked for them, guys in my program and such. But, I think the thing is that a lot of times we don't think that our boner can go away if we don't blow it out. This idea that, and the reason being, I think, is because as it fills up with blood, we push into it. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but if you got a cock, you probably do. When that boner fills up and you start moving it, right? I don't know what other guys do with their dicks, but when mine blows up, I'm the cock. It starts moving. It's like you pump into it. I call them little penis pumps. Don't do the penis pump. And so that by itself is a way to control self. It's a form of self-mastery, right? Because it almost seems, and if you allow it to be, it will be completely uncontrollable, and it's like, you have no control over whether it moves or not. Now, just like we control our breathing, right? Like when we're working out or when we're praying, you can control that movement. Just stop moving it. If you stop moving it and make a promise not to touch it, like don't touch it with your hands, don't press it up against something. That's another thing that we can do, right? Go press it up against something or touch it and hold it, hopefully I'm not the only one sounding weird, but those are things that will happen or just naturally happen. Don't touch it and don't let it move. And what you'll discover is that the only way that you can stop it from moving is by breathing slowly and deeply. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, if you have a raging boner, then focus on breathing." I think the breathing, you will focus on the breathing. The focused breathing is a result of trying to keep it from not moving. Does that make sense? If you try to keep that sucker from not moving, you'll find out, well, the only way I can keep this guy from not moving is if I go unconscious with my breathing, all of a sudden he'll move. So, morning boners, that's one of the, because guys, we get morning wood, right? That's one of the places where I'll practice that. I'll wake up in the morning, I'm just getting out of, just about to wake up, and there it is, that raging boner, right? And instead of pressing into it or enjoying it, that's the other thing too, right? Instead of enjoying the feeling of it, try to draw the feeling away from it. And then by and by, you'll be shocked. All of a sudden, it dissipates. It goes away, right? It doesn't have to control you. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to explain to the guys. It doesn't have to control you. You can control it. What are your thoughts or experience on that?
I think that's a very, very profound point. That as long as people recognize that there's not this inevitability of chain of reaction, that you can break that chain of reaction if you catch it early enough. Mm-hmm. I think that applies to so many bad behaviors and vicious behaviors, that it's at the beginning of that chain of decisions. If one says, no, it's not inevitable that this thing, that thing, it's like you can short circuit it with, like you said, staying ahead of yourself right there. Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
So another
just
one
don't
of the
accept
things,
the inevitability.
Right. Don't believe that it must happen. And a lot of people, they have this
Right.
idea that it's almost like it's a right, or it's my right, it's my duty, I must do it, right? When they don't recognize the power of self-denial. And so there are a few sacramentals and prayers and spiritual practices that I've heard others speak about that could be very helpful in this warfare. I want to dive into those in a second, but first I want to give a couple shout outs. We've got some super chats, and I really appreciate that. We haven't had that in a while here on the show. Joe Walco, super chat to it, $25. Big fan from the Yo Elliott days. Really enjoy these shows. They are like calibration for my moral compass. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate the super chat. $10 from Carrier Cross. Keep up the great work, guys. Krok Sakra Sit Malux, Mihi Lux. I think that means may the light, may the holy cross be my light. Awesome. And Ashwin Moses, $5 from Ashwin, says, Elliot, the battle is a struggle for us all. Despite the role models like Andrew Tate and you, what you bring to the tables, others are missing. God bless, brothers. Very cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd like to just propose a couple things I've heard. I haven't, some of these things I've done and I haven't done, but maybe they could help you. And some of the guys in my program have used. Number one, have you ever heard of a St. Joseph cord? Do you know what that is?
Is this a Eastern Orthodox prayer rope, or is this something different?
So it's apparently it's a sacramental. It's called a Saint Joseph cord, and it's just like the brown scapular or like a scapular. It can be blessed. It can be prayed over, and somehow it retains that prayer and it brings those graces into your life. Well, this is a sort of a knitted cord, and you can get one, and then you can have it prayed over by a priest, and you tie it around your waist. Kind of like a spiritual chastity belt, right? I was just watching YouTube videos about this. And, listen, fellas, if this is important to you and you are a warrior in the spiritual battle, you benefit greatly from the use of sacramentals. And so a St. Joseph cord is just it's a white cord, and you tie it around just like a belt. You're not cinching it down and cutting off your genitals. You're not cutting off your lower body. But you're just tying it around, and I could only imagine, right? One of the beautiful things about the Catholic faith is how tangible it is. It's a very incarnate faith. We eat Jesus and, drink his blood and get down on our knees and beat our chests and do the sign of the cross, have sacramentals, use water, use salt, use all these things. It's a very tangible, it's not a faith of airy-fairy spirit stuff. It's very tangible. And so I love the idea that, just tying a little cord around your waist as a means, I would say, beyond the prayer that it's infused with, as a reminder, right? Like every time maybe you're looking down there to handle your rock hard boner, but then you see the St. Joseph cord. And that kind of just, it's sort of a pattern interrupt. And it's like, whoop, it breaks the pattern.
Right.
What are your thoughts about the use of
I'd never heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of that, but yeah, that sounds like that could be exceptionally powerful for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. That's great. I wasn't aware that existed. But yeah, it makes sense to me that if what I like so much about things like that, like you said, visual expressions of the sacraments and of our various rites, is that it restores a sense of dignity to things. And if there is a dignity to this this particular blessed cord, then it reminds you, oh yeah, like this is important. I'm not gonna sully myself or sully Christ's name by participating in a vicious act as I'm looking at this thing. I mean, that's a huge cognitive dissonance that's being created. So I think that it sounds like a very powerful
St. Joseph cord. I literally just found out about that today. So I'm going to do a little bit more research on that, and maybe one of the things that I introduced to the guys in my program. Another one that I learned, and this is from listening to Jesse Romero, and he's all about teaching the spiritual warfare. They've got the Libro Cristo War College podcast that I would suggest, if you're in this battle, fellas, you ought to listen to that. And oftentimes they go deep into the different deliverance prayers that are associated with overcoming any kind of vice or just in the spiritual battle itself. But one thing that he suggested over and over again is to either pray in front of a bloody crucifix. It sounds crazy, right? But Catholics, once again, and as an incarnate faith, a tangible faith, one of the things that we venerate are crucifixes with Jesus on the cross. And he suggests that by meditating in front of he says, find the bloody one, where after he was scourged, and I've seen them. You can look, you just go on YouTube or go on Google and look up, a picture of a bloody crucifix. And I know it sounds crazy, and I'm just proposing it, right? Because sometimes desperate times need desperate measures. He says that the look of the bloody Christ, in particular, his feet, I don't know why, I'm just telling you guys this stuff. In particular, his feet, his bloody feet, the nails through his feet, they represent the denial of the flesh, because the scourging and the crucifix represents physical purity. It represents purity. What are your thoughts on that? Meditating on a bloody crucifix, and maybe this is probably something you've done more of, praying the sorrowful mysteries as a means for overcoming pornography.
Yeah, I've done the latter, but I've never heard of this this form of practice. But yeah, I think it makes sense given what you said. Yeah, that the mortification of the flesh and the overcoming of the flesh is most emblematic and most realized in Christ's crucifixion. So yeah, it would make sense that not just praying to an inert, bloodless cross, but one that's actually a real representation of what happened can really hit home for that overcoming of those bodily temptations. So yeah, that would make sense as well.
Yeah. So praying the sorrowful mysteries, and I've discovered just as a means for overcoming angst, anxiety. Sometimes I get angry and frustrated. Just life in general that causes that stimulation of unresourceful emotions, and of course, a lot of times lust is this unresourceful emotion. Just praying the Rosary itself, and listen, we can. This is a spiritual talk. We're talking about spiritual warfare, and I do believe the power of the prayers themselves. But I can't help but to sense that it's the fact that I'm actually getting on my knees and I'm praying this repetitive prayer and breathing in a rhythmic way, that all of a sudden, all those things melt away. And so it's like reining in or tempering the beast.
Yeah, I almost imagine as like you're clearing space for that space within your being that isn't this noise of vice or unresourceful thoughts, and then that can translate to unresourceful or vicious behaviors. Yeah, it's you're making room for the best thoughts, for the best being in yourself.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this? So, one of the things that I share with the guys in my program, whether it's pornography, drinking drugs, jerking off, any of those things, is to see it from the loving Father's perspective, right? Like, we could look at it like, oh, I'm a victim of this thing, and why doesn't God, here's one, why doesn't God just take this away? And I know people I love that, they struggle with that. It was like, if God wants me to be perfect, then why doesn't he just take this away? Why doesn't he just remove it from my life, right? Then there would be no room for growth. What are your thoughts on God using these vices as a means by which we can emerge stronger? It's like a training tool Robert Bly in Iron John says, every wound is a womb, as an opportunity. I wonder if we shifted our perspective on this from why me, this is horrible, I wish I could, but I can't, to this is an opportunity for me to develop something in myself that's weak. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're granted free wills and agency, and it wouldn't count. It wouldn't count if God just moved us around like we were chess pieces on a chessboard. We'd be a nerd. So the Creator wants to see his creatures succeed and flourish, but it has to be on our own choosing. So I think God wants to honor our free will and wants to help us along to realize this flourishing. But it has to be of our own agency. It has to be our own will submitting to God's will and freely choosing to live virtuous lives. Anything less than that, we're not agents. We're not free creatures at that point. Like, what's the point? It would just be like a kid playing with toys. We wouldn't have any possibility for the realization of the good because we wouldn't have any choice. So yeah, in this in granting us free will, God wants to see us succeed, but by our choice, not by some predestination.
Right. I like how you say that, by our choice. And it's kind of it's a tough spot to be in sometimes as a Christian, because there's this is it free will or is it fate? And I know that Catholics in particular don't believe that once you're saved, then all things go away. You got to work towards it. There is works. There are works involved. And I can't help but to just liken it unto the Heavenly Father with us and the challenges that we experience, to me as a father with my son. Me and my son, we train in the gym. Every morning he and I will do a workout. What kind of father would I be if whenever my son was challenged by a resistance, a weight or a sandbag that he couldn't lift up, and I was like, oh, there, my son, it's okay. Let me take this and carry this for you. I would be a terrible dad and I'd be a terrible coach. In fact, like when he's suffering, that's when I'm egging him on the most. I'm like, that's it. Keep going. Work through it. You got this. Pick it back up. Go.
Yep.
And I think that's what God does with us.
He'd be atrophying. He'd atrophy if you took it off at that point where he was hitting that point. It would be the reverse of building. Yeah, it would facilitate atrophy at that moment.
Right. With no challenge, there's no triumph.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, what I'd like to do? We got about 5 minutes left. I don't want to hold you much longer. It's just been a two-man show here, two-man car.
Yeah.
And that's okay, man. I think this is such an important topic and such a powerful paradigm that we're approaching it from, being spiritual warfare, that we might have to do this again. But in the meantime,
get everybody back. Yeah.
Let's choose one or two questions to sort of unpack before we move on. I'm going to leave that open to you guys because we got a lot of guys watching us here today. Over 130 people are on the call right now. Drop a question. I'm going to skin through. And if you guys have any questions, anything you want to hear from us as it relates to the spiritual war that we're living through and the weapon of porn that we see, let us know. Let's see, I actually did have one here. DS says, how about the thought that if you ignore the urges for long enough, that your dick will stop working? I'm going to say something that is not going to fly real well for most guys, but as I've gotten older, I came to start believing that lucky is the man that doesn't need to blow his load. It's almost like a nuisance, right? It doesn't move us forward in life if we're not procreating. So why this boner? And so people will often think or they'll get older and they'll lament that, oh, I don't have the sex drive I used to have, or I'm not getting hard boners like I used to get. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I'm looking at like 20-year-old guys and they're like, I can't get rid of this boner. And so, from that broad perspective, being a 44-year-old man myself, I say to the guys my age that are like, it's not working like it used to. I go, congratulations, man. Blessed is the man that doesn't need to blow his load. Because why walk around with a raging boner that's just going to get you in trouble or frustrate you? What are your thoughts on that? Should people be worried that if they don't use it, they lose it?
I used to worry about this as well, and I guess I'm just reminded of Plato has the analogy of the human person, and the analogies between that of the our emotions and our passions are like the horses, and the reins are like our will, and the charioteer in the chariot is our reason.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want is a integrated union of those things, where yes, you want the horses to have horsepower, but you want the reins, your will, to be strong enough to guide the horses, and then you want the charioteer, your reason, to be able to make logical and rational decisions. And the totality of those things gets you to the direction you want to go in. And I think there's a danger in people think, well, what I want is just the most powerful horses and nothing else, right? And it's
Right.
like your chariot's going to fly apart. You're going to get chucked around all over the place, right? Okay, yeah, having strong horses that is a good thing, but if it's to the detriment of your will and your reason, you can't control them, and you're crashing all over the place. What good is it? It's not even a good anymore. It's something that you're fighting all the time. So you don't want no horses, but you don't want such unruly horses that you're out of control. So I think that's
Yeah.
the, I don't know, wisdom that I think I've learned as I've gotten older.
Yeah, I agree with that, right? People want things that are not proper to their state. And if you don't have that moral and intellectual capacity to handle a raging boner, then maybe it's good that you don't have it. That horse is going to destroy you.
Yeah, I think I think this also, I think like testosterone levels somehow. This is also there's like a very like flat-footed way of thinking about it that way too, where it's just like, oh well, being masculine just means more testosterone. So
Yeah.
there's no upper limit. Just more testosterone means I'm a better and more of a man. It's like at some point there's an upper limit, if you're trying to whatever, like pick fights with a wall, and at some point, yeah, you might want to recalibrate things.
In terms of this warfare, we do have one question here I want to answer, but I just wanted to throw this out. I remember hearing Kyle Clement talk about this in the Liber Curso War College, that men are often led towards the use of pornography, PMO, when there is a strike against their self-perception. And I didn't really understand what he meant when he said that. He says the temptation usually comes when there's a challenge to their self-perception, who they think themselves to be. And I started paying attention to myself, and maybe it's not to the same degree, because of course it's sex within my marriage and whatnot. But I could see where there are times when you feel like less of a man as a result of maybe losing a job, or breaking up, or just having a bad day. And so my sense of self is challenged, and concomitantly, or on the other side of the spectrum, if I have this screen sex and blow my load, there's a temporary coherence of my perception of myself with my experience, which is usually tied through pride. So it's like, my pride was broken today, but I'll boost myself up by having, fake sex from a screen, blowing my load, and that will it gives this false sense of integration now. Now I'm normal again. Now I feel like myself again. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
No, I haven't heard that theory or that explanation in particular. But yeah, I could see that. I could see that as if somebody, yeah, they feel like their world's flying apart. or their identity isn't matching the world. That could be a knee jerk, a knee jerk thing that they're resorting to in order to feel like they're reestablishing some type of agency in the world. If it feels like they're around too much chaos, I would say the same things probably with drinking or overeating or any other vice like that. Yeah, it restores some sense of control or sense of I don't know, a false center maybe.
Yeah, self-control. Yeah, I like that too. It makes you think that you're somehow in control because I'm taking the reins here and I'm making something happen when you feel powerless. So we actually got two quick questions. You said you have like about 5 minutes to run through these?
Yeah, we can do it. Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy, spotty show. So let's see what we can do here. So we got one from Spiritual Academy. He says, with population collapse imminent, do you believe resourceful men multiplying outside of tradition may be a necessity and something women may have to accept? And so what I think I hear him saying, maybe you want to clarify, is that with population collapse, should men be having multiple wives again? Is that reasonable? Does that make any sense? Is that something that women should accept? He's asking.
That's what it sounds like. What he's asking. I don't know. I think if it reminds me of what's that movie with I don't know. They're talking about the mine shaft gap and the '60s movie with forget the I don't know. I forget, but yeah, they're talking about like in a post-apocalyptic world, they're gonna have to live in a underground bunker, and that they need. Well, we're obligated to repopulate the earth, so I mean somebody's got to do it. So we'll take on this obligation. Oh gosh, what's what the terrible obligation we're gonna have? So we have to repopulate the earth. Some '60s movie, I forget the name of it. I don't know. I mean, I try to not think that these things are necessarily inevitable. I think, if we can restore some foundations, there's going to be pockets of what look like traditional monogamy and Western civilization that will maintain. And I think that's probably the best antidote to the civilizational collapse rather than, I don't know, this other presumed post-apocalyptic world where some small set of men have to repopulate the world with multiple wives. I'd rather see the former than the latter, and I think that's actually much more pragmatic as well.
Yeah, a few different things come to mind with this. The first is go deep, not wide. And so part of the reason why this population collapses, I think the population explosion and then the collapse is all related to a moral collapsing. We wouldn't be in the situation that we are in right now if we didn't lose the faith and we had lived by the natural law. And so rather than thinking in terms of, okay, I'm going to spread the seed this way, how about we focus in on our families and develop more quality people, right? I mean, once again, the very problem of population expansion, I guess to some degree has something to do, I don't even know if that's an actual problem, but has something to do with, I hate to say it, maybe I know I'm wrong when I say it, but just like the reproduction of a bunch of useless people. These are not people that are going to populate heaven, all God would love for them to. But the world that they're born into and the treadmill that they're running on, most of us are running on, leads to perdition. And so what's the point? Right? Like, why get more customers if you can't get results for the handful that you got? Like, take care of what you got. That's what I think anyway, right? If we're gonna do it the right way, then focus in on what you have here rather than trying to spread wide, right? I don't know. That's my thought on
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. Doctor Strangelove is the movie where they talk about this. But yeah, I mean, the other thing too is look at the actual sociological evidence of places like Mogadishu, for instance. That if you have a wide amount of polyamorous or polygamous relationships, you have a failed society at that point. You have a bunch of war bands and warlords they're fighting over resources. You don't have the type of coherence and the necessary soil to build culture and to build civilization. So and then I think that points to natural law. But aside from that, even if you don't subscribe to natural law, you just look at the sociological evidence by folks like Glubb or Unwin, or like I said, places like Mogadishu, and yeah, polyamory and polygamy leads to warlordism, and that's no functioning society, and that will get steamrolled by any type of group that has coherent fathers and families
Absolutely. Yeah.
and monogamy.
So, final question, and this is sort of a practical one. I think a good one to finish on. CB says, I'm currently battling with an addiction to porn, and I have the urges to release often. Am I setting myself back if I'm releasing those urges using my memory and imagination with no porn? So, the first thing that comes to mind, I just want to take a stab at this here, is that I think it's proper that people have been replacing the term porn use and addiction with PMO, because porn is not used in a vacuum, right? Nobody just watches porn like they're watching a football game, right? Go, right? They're not cheering anybody on. It's it's a self-indulgent act. It's self-abuse. So if you're not using porn, well, okay, so it's just one part of the triad that we're really wanting to triumph over, which is the M and the O. So porn, masturbation, and orgasm. And so listen, we all have subjective experiences. What may work for me may not work for you, but I implore you to try to have literal control over your penis. Don't try to not use porn. Don't try to not jerk off. Don't try to not have orgasm. See if you have enough skill or develop the skill, develop the mastery, just like you would if you wanted to learn how to juggle, right? You got to practice this thing. You got to breathe through it. And you got to fail a couple of times. But if you just try to keep your dick still when you're raging, he says, I have the urges to release often. What comes before the urge to release? Now, I want to head it off at the pass. The urge to release doesn't happen when you're flaccid. The urge to release happens there's 3 steps, right? You gotta engorge, and then you have to entertain, and then you have the urge, right? Let's step it back. Don't entertain, meaning like don't dance with your dick. If it wants to move, you say, hey, I'm not dancing with you today. You're not saying I'm not using porn. You're not saying I'm not jerking off. You're not saying I'm not going to orgasm. You're saying, hey, I'm going to keep you still. I'm going to just see how long it takes and what do I got to do. And it's really it's like being an athlete. You have, physical mastery over your body. As an athlete, if you want to play baseball, you don't just complain that, well, my arms just don't swing right to hit the ball. It doesn't make any sense. Well, then you're not training for the sport and you'll never hit a ball. What do? Oh, you swing and you realize, oh, okay, that didn't work so well. And then what do? You breathe, you calm down, you focus, you go at it again, you hit a home run. Every time your boner goes away, it's like hitting a home run. You got to strike out. Just a couple times, but eventually you'll have mastery over it. And I don't think this is, I'm apologizing a little bit because it's like, okay, maybe I'm not 20 years old, so I don't understand. And, I didn't struggle the same way you guys are with porn at that age. But there was a time, and I'm just putting myself on the blocks here, I'm not using it anymore, but there was a time when I was on HRT. Because I wanted to do a strawman show, so I was like, I'm gonna cheat, because really I didn't need it. And it was raging boner time. And that gave me like sort of a flashback to being 20. And that's when I discovered don't dance with your dick. That's when I discovered, oh, okay, raging boners. I remember this. And I used to lean into it, or I would need to release it. But now I choose self-mastery. Draw it back. And then if it stops, so if we're walking it back, don't dance with it. And if you don't dance with it, it goes away. And I know that there's all this, Montauk Chia Taoist sex stuff that people think is mystical. I don't think it's very mystical. I think by making they say that sexual transmutation, right? Like you pull the blood back in and then you'll all of a sudden, they call it chi, life force. You draw it back in and then it's going to make you smart. Maybe that's true. I don't know. Maybe it'll fuel something, some charisma or some motivation. But I can't help but to think that it's just big dick energy coming back in your body. All that blood filled up and engorged you, and it kicks off a cascade of hormones that are seeking hormones, testosterone, right? And oxytocin itself also. Testosterone and oxytocin are kind of seeking, because oxytocin wants to take in, and testosterone wants to reach out. Those hormones, as you have mastery over the blood in your genitals, and those hormones flood your system, now that reaching out and receiving hormone has to do something in your body, and that leads to better work, more creativity, more charisma. What are your thoughts? Should our friend, if he remains free from porn, still be indulging and using the MO?
Yeah, I think not much additionally I could say there. I think you've had a very thorough answer, and I think that's correct. Yeah, we need to see, not porn just as the P, but the PMO together, that entire chain of, the entire circuit of relationships. And if you can, I think it's a really powerful idea to think, it's like get ahead of it, get ahead of that entire causal chain, and try to be cognizant and don't just accept the inevitability of it. And I think that's a huge thing that could be really beneficial for people to hear, because once you've accepted the inevitability of that behavioral chain, now you're fighting midway through the momentum of it versus cutting it off at the pass. So I think that makes a lot of sense with what you just said.
Yeah, brother. Very cool, man.
The other thing I can think of is try to be. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the only other thing I can think of that's helped me at times is stay busier. When you're busy, when you're very, very busy, and then you're just end the day and you're exhausted, and you just want to go to sleep, and then you wake up again and you're busy again. You've just crowded out the space for the idle hands, so to speak. So I think that helps as well. It's just block your time better and just try to be busier.
Yeah, if the urge comes, run. That's one of the things one of my guys told me. He says, listen, that urge comes, you got to get out of the spot that temptation pervades. Like if I'm here at my computer and the urge comes, well, get up and go away. Go outside. Go for a walk. Go do something else that gets you out of that environment.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Agreed.
Well, fellas, appreciate you. Wish we could continue here. I think this is an episode or a series that we may continue in some way, shape, or form. Maybe next time we get on my channel, because I think this is one that my audience in particular is challenged with. Like I said, I'm speaking to men, and about 60 to 70% are struggling in this manner. But hey, Mike, appreciate you, brother. Where can people watch your videos or read your books moving forward?
Thank you. Appreciate you as well, Elliot. This is a very important conversation, and happy to revisit it again. You can find me at michaelroblood.com. I have 2 books, Outsourcing Duty and Don't Go to College with Tim Gordon, and I'm on Twitter as Dr. Robillard, and also on Substack as well. That's where a lot of my writings are. So Also have a YouTube channel, and I'm up next week. So
Okay, yeah.
tune in next week, and we can.
That's right.
Cool.
Yep. Okay, good. Appreciate you guys. Looking forward to doing more live streams. Everybody, stay strong, stay vigilant, keep growing stronger. Love y'all. Done.